Hi everyone. So welcome to Mastermind Roundtable. So today I got you a special guest, Duncan Lee. So Duncan is an old friend of mine, and we used to work in the same company and know each other for many years. Duncan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Morris. Thank you for having me on this episode. Hello, everyone. As Morris mentioned, we used to work together. We've known each other for a long time. I used to be a lawyer. I actually still keep the legal qualification, qualified in England and Wales. And I look after investment ESG at AIA. So looking forward to this discussion.
So Duncan, you just mentioned that you used to be a lawyer and you still keep your legal profession, right? And now you are no longer a lawyer but work in ESG investments, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting transition. Why don't you tell us more about your background and why there is such a transition and, more interesting things.
Okay, sure. Thank you. A lawyer is there to help their client, provide solutions. So typically, you do drafting, you do advice, a lot of skills that you can acquire through the discipline of training to be a lawyer and then practice as a lawyer. And then you can bring that into different disciplines. There's a lot of soft skills that can actually transfer across. So it's been a very interesting, number of years. And some of the soft skills are navigating complexity, even more so now. The world is even more complex. Problem solving, people want good solutions, commercial solutions, not just advice or yes, no, or no, this is what you can't do. And they want a commercial based approach. And there's also like communications. Some lawyers are good at it, some lawyers are not so good at it, especially the spoken, right? Some lawyers can be very concise. Some lawyers, when they write, they can be very, very long. But depending on who you're communicating with,
right,
you tailor the message accordingly, right? And then the influence also comes with that. You can use language to influence who you're trying to communicate with, and how you do it has a different outcome. So it's definitely an art, not a science.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe so. Even though you are no longer a lawyer now, you just mentioned, right? Because I think you do pick up so many useful skills from those days when you was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And in fact, today we're going to talk about when it comes to a corporate world, right? What kind of skill set, whether you are a young professional, experienced professional, are going to help you to succeed in a corporation. That's one thing. And I know we may also talk about leaderships, right?
Yeah.
And stakeholder management as well. So many things to talk about.
Sure.
But that can ride on your past experience and now as in your current role in one leading insurance companies in Hong Kong as a group director, right? So let's talk about, the key or essential skill sets which will enable, young professionals to succeed in the corporate world.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack there. If we start with the skills, I would say, problem solving, the ability to break down, anything can be a problem. Anything can be a big problem or a small problem. You can decompose it and break it down into smaller bite-sized items to deal with, right? It's the thought process, trying to solve something that is, huge organizational change, transformation, that seems daunting, but then you can say, what does that actually mean? It means that these people may be impacted this way. There's perhaps a process impact, a technology impact, data, all that kind of stuff, controls.
Right.
If you can analyze those and break it down, you don't need to necessarily know the answers to those. You need to be able to identify which are the right stakeholders to bring to the table.
Right.
So if you're trying to solve for something, let's say operational, then you should be bringing the operational team or the IT team. And if there's a regulatory angle in it, you should be bringing your risk people, your compliance people.
Right.
It's about identifying the stakeholders, bringing them together, and then looking at smaller bite-sized chunks of the problem, and then everyone offering their perspectives, but the perspectives may differ, and then the value add is also to try and find that common ground. At the end of the day, it may sound like a negotiation, because it partly probably is, because you may want different things, I may want different things.
Definitely. Yeah.
The real beauty is to find a solution that gets you far and long enough for what you want, and for you to be able to account to your stakeholders, and likewise for the other stakeholders as well.
Agree. What you just said is very useful. Indeed, when many people think about skill sets, think about problem solving, many people would think that that is quite ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because right in school, in university, no one taught us how to solve problems, right? There's no a textbook called problem solving, right?
Right.
And you just mentioned, right? Because you are a lawyer,
Yep.
I'm an accountant, right?
Yep.
And so our mentality, our thinking tends to be more logical.
Yes.
And you are exactly spot on that. First of all, you should learn how to break a problem into different small bite-sized issues, right? And after identifying all those, bite-sized issues, you can identify who would be your stakeholder,
Right.
to manage,
Yeah.
to influence,
Yes.
right? And to move the needle.
Yes.
And so when it comes to stakeholder management, that is also a very interesting area, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure, in your past experience, in my past experience, there must be a lot of tons of experience managing stakeholders.
Yeah.
What's your experience that you can share with our audience?
Sure. Very good question. The stakeholders, you've got internal stakeholders, external. We'll go through and unpack those in turn. But it's all, I would say, you sort of like need to reach a view, and you may develop this view as you progress towards your task or your project or whatever, of not only is who is my stakeholder, but what is it that they want? Are they interested in the outcome? Are they impacted by the outcome? Or are you just reporting to them because they're senior management or whatever? So knowing them and knowing what they want to see or prefer, then that helps you shape the way that you communicate with them.
Right, exactly.
If you're talking to the finance person, you mentioned you're an accountant, right? If their concern is about keeping the project, let's say, under control in terms of cost, if you know that what you're messaging to them is what's your projected spend, how you're doing, how you're tracking against that. Oh, you were supposed to spend this amount last month, but nothing happened. Does that mean why is that? You didn't engage people, you're still scoping, or what? And it's to address their concerns. That is how you then do that empathetic kind of communication, right? But let's talk about the stakeholders. So what we do is investment ESG. So let's deal with the external stakeholders, because we have a lot of them. We have our regulators. We're a listed company, so the stock exchange is a interested stakeholder. We're insurance company, so we're also regulated. So that insurance regulator will be an interested stakeholder. We also have shareholders who hold our shares, bondholders who hold our bonds, other market participants, including our peers, other companies, industry associations, all of those, and they will want different things, right? So, for example, the regulators might be saying, we've got these listed company regulations. They're looking at it from perhaps a compliance angle, but they may also want you to take a lead because the company is a prominent company, right? So can you lead by example? Can you contribute to the ongoing debate? That's also showing leadership as well, right? And it's leadership, but it's also good publicity for the company as well, right? But that also means you need to be careful what you're saying in the public domain, because we have our public disclosure, and not everything. It's not just go and talk your mind freely. You have to always be wary of what the company has said, and some of the things that is confidential or sensitive to the company you cannot disclose. And, this conversation is no different as well, right? Other market participants, banks, asset managers, they may want to come and sell your product or help you with a service, or they may want to come and help you solve a problem, because either they might have come across it before, they might have dealt with it on their client side before, or they have the expertise, or they think you don't have the expertise or experience, right? So they have an interesting perspective, and they're good for sounding out what market participants are doing, or what is the trend, or this insurance company is thinking A, what are other insurance companies doing, or what about international, what are the European insurance companies doing, or asset managers doing. So they are useful. They have a self-interest, because they want to ultimately give you what they want you to deploy funds with them so that they can manage funds for you and earn those fees, or they want you to buy their products, right? So, but you can think about those in terms of potential partnerships, right? If you develop a longer working relationship, then it's not just about it's a mutually beneficial one, which ultimately may work out to be there might be a monetary element to it, but then they can help solve issues with you, co-create, or even put your brains together and come up with a new market that then serves as a good marketing angle for both companies as well. So they're also interested. Other stakeholders would be external stakeholders would be let's say NGOs and students, right? Some people, NGOs may have an angle because they want to influence you to take certain actions or not take certain actions. Similar to shareholders as well, but shareholders, they have the ability to come to your AGM and vote, or they can write to your executive leadership, and then the group investor relations team will deal with them and then bring in the stakeholders. So they're more prominent, and obviously the more shares or more bonds they hold, then the louder their voice, right? Some of our investors are very interested in ESG, and particularly what we're doing on the investment side. So they will request an ESG meeting. So it's the opportunity for the investment side to talk about what we've been doing over and beyond the public disclosure, but then also address some of their questions. And they may also be thinking, what are you thinking in terms of the next couple of years? And that you might be able to, share some of the initial high-level thinking or caveat that, and we haven't made any firm commitments or anything, but these are the things we're thinking about. We're talking to internal stakeholders, and they want to be seen coming along on that journey, because then it feels that they are getting valuable information from the people that do the work, as opposed to someone who comes with a script and the speaking points that someone's prepared. Students as well, they a lot more ESG and sustainability courses in the universities. I've shared at some universities as well in Hong Kong. So that's good. You want to encourage that talent. You want them to come into the market and build that talent pipeline, because Hong Kong has ambitions to be an ESG or sustainable finance center. And so you need to have the talent to sustain it. And then also today's young people will be tomorrow's leaders as well, right?
I mean, brilliant. I mean, and that's also a hugely diverse group of stakeholders to manage.
For external,
so from what I heard from you, Duncan, just now, so you got regulators, you got shareholders, you got industry peers, you got other group of people. So if I may summarize what you just said in one or two sentences, it's all about how to managing the conflict of interest, not necessarily conflict of interest, but different interests,
different perspectives.
Because different perspectives. For example, regulators care more about how you comply with the rules and laws, whereas your shareholders care about more about how you deliver the outcome, And so it's more about how to harmonize different people's interests, and that's very, very difficult, And I think you mentioned a very good point that maybe one way of doing it is to create mutual benefits, to co-create, and to harmonize the relationship, rather than say, okay, because you are a regulator, I am being regulated, so we confront it with each other. It doesn't work, right? And this also brings up another message that when you are going to enter the industry, ESG investments, or enter a highly regulated industry or companies, you got to be prepared that you will be facing a lot of stakeholders.
Yeah, for sure.
And that would be taking up probably 90% of your time, I think.
A lot. And I don't think this, the stakeholder management perspective is not unique to ESG. Many other departments and teams within the company, and I'm sure at other companies have the same thing. But there's a lot of it is a lot of meetings, a lot of alignment, a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue. We operate in a digital age, right? So we use MS Teams. But if you're in the same building, why would you have an MS Teams call when you can just go and meet physically?
I totally agree.
If we did this conversation on MS Teams or Zoom, it's not going to be the same person now. We're two of us in the same room, right?
Yes.
So
that's also the challenges, right? The COVID period does bring a lot of troubles and challenges to corporates, right? So let's move on. So you mentioned about external stakeholders, right? Let's also talk about internal stakeholders, because there are also so many internal stakeholders. You mentioned one, which I think is important, is our boss, right? Our manager, and the board, right?
Yes.
So and then also you have your co-workers, you have your junior staff, right? So different group of stakeholders, they do need different kind of attentions. I give you a very tough question, Duncan. What if the agenda of your boss is actually different from yours, or even from the board? How do you manage it? Honestly, I don't have a perfect question to it, but let's just brainstorm, right? Because it does happen quite often, right?
There's different degrees, just like there's different degrees of it's not necessarily yes, no, black and white, right? It can be gray and in the middle, right? It's like, if they're different, is it like diametrically opposed? Like, board doesn't want to do this, but the management want to do completely opposite? Or is it like they look like they're not the same, but actually there's actually quite a lot of common area? And if there's a lot of common area, then the challenge is to find those common areas and then communicate with the different stakeholders whilst addressing their concerns and needs, and then also influence that, maybe we can't do A, B, C, D, E because someone else is asking for E, F, G, H, whatever. And then the common ground is the thing that's going to be, and look, not everything needs to be solved in one go, right? Part of a lot of the mindset difficulties are, I have to jump from zero to the end solution in one go. You can have a day one launch where, 3 out of like 10 initiatives are met. And then your 2-year plan, 5-year plan are to meet more and more, right? But you also need to be dynamic in that people can change, perspectives can change, circumstances can change. If we had this conversation probably half a year ago, the geopolitical landscape would be somewhat different, right? We wouldn't have tariffs and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely. You does answer my question. You gave me a very perfect answers, because I think indeed, I mean, not just between you and your boss, but between different counterparties. We may have different agendas all the time, right? But I think the key thing is you got to find a common ground. And you got to find a common ground first and narrow the differences. Right? And then both parties align on the timeline to actually reach the ultimate point. Right? So I think that's a very good way of handling it, I think.
If I may, when you think about external stakeholders, we already mentioned like regulators, market participants, NGOs, and shareholders, for example, and students, right? The internal stakeholders, people might think that, that's just people. It's with people within your company, but if you look at it, like we're doing decomposing complexity, it's actually more complex than it is, because you mentioned the people at the top, the stakeholders, the board, and the executive management, right? But then there's also people within the investment function, right, that are not doing ESG day in, day out, right? Those are our stakeholders. Then we have functional stakeholders, our group finance people, our group risk, the internal audit, technology, all those, that's just to name a few, right? They are also important stakeholders as well. So as you said, how you communicate is very, very different, right? And you've got working teams, right? The working teams, that include people on your team, and they may be, we talk generations, right? They may be my generation, or they may be, actually I have a colleague who's 2 generations younger than me. So we have a truly multi-generation team. So how do you manage those? It's very different.
And actually it exists in all companies. Right? When you are trying to manage a young boy or young girl who is only, say, 20 years old, and then it's very different from managing one who is within a company for 10 to 20 years. How do you actually manage that?
I think you need to show, I would suggest you show a few things, or at least consider a few things. Consider that you're both at different stages in your career. The experience level is different. The desires may be different. The ambitions may be different. The working style, collaborating means working together, right? May be very different as well. That person might say everything needs to be on instant messaging in terms of communication, whereas someone my generation or someone else might say, I actually only want things on emails. Now you got to find a common ground, right? It may be more efficient to do things on instant messaging, but then if you have an actual conversation, if we had this conversation not face to face but on instant messaging, you have a very, very long transcript at the end. So it's to set those parameters, and I don't think you could do the kind of I am the boss, I am the manager, or I'm the senior person, and this is the way kind of thing, But I would suggest a better approach is to find out what works best between you and your colleague or your teammate, because the dynamics may be different. Sometimes the formal stuff may be on an email or it may be in a report, but sometimes having a face-to-face conversation is going to be good as well. And then working that, because these young people are very digital, right? They embrace that. So they don't necessarily want to have a phone call, a voice call.
They don't want to come to office, right? Sometimes.
Well, if you, depending on who you talk to, whether working remotely or in the office, has a different degree of effectiveness. If people can still work at home or remotely, then why not? It doesn't matter if they can work remotely, whether they're at home or on the beach somewhere. It doesn't make any difference, right? If you have that trust and professionalism and the respect, then it should work. You know, how you do it is a different thing.
Yes, I agree. I mean, when I ask different people, I always get different answers.
Right.
But for me, right, if I may, if I can share my experience,
please.
You just need to be more practical and pragmatic.
Right.
And accommodative.
Yeah.
As you just said, all right? So it's very hard for us to agree on a particular set of or particular way of working with these young guys.
Yeah.
They prefer to work at home.
Right.
I just don't want to come to office, right?
Right.
But I can finish the work at home, right?
Right.
Or I don't prefer emails. I prefer WhatsApp or other things, right?
Yeah.
But I start to change myself over the last few years because you gotta change.
Yes.
And I care more about the outcome.
Yes.
I care more about the final products.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will actually say, fine, I can give you this kind of flexibility.
Yeah.
But we need to be very clear.
Yeah.
So I don't allow ambiguities, right? You want to work it at home, say 3 days at home, fine. But tell me which 3 days.
Right.
It couldn't be just random, right?
Yeah.
And if you say, okay, I don't want to use emails, then first of all, I got to let you know the company policies.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
And the consequences, right?
Yeah.
So that's why so as the leader, right?
Yeah.
We got to remind them about the boundaries.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
okay, what kind of, leeways we can allow.
Yeah.
And then we wait for the outcome.
Right.
And if you are really a performer, which is fine, right? Because I think the world is changing, right? And these people, they do have very different mindset with us. We got to accept it, right? So I think be more accommodative.
Yeah, no, you made a good point about how you work. You may choose, but ultimately, if you're both working for a company, the company's policies, the company's procedures, the guardrails that have been set down by the company, those need to be complied with. And it's important that both you as the senior person and the junior team member realize that if you may agree something different, but then there could be consequences for one of you or both of you. And these are unintended consequences.
Yes.
Right? The company has rules and policies and procedures for a reason. So, they expect their employees to abide by them. So never lose sight of that. And, it's, I would say, adherence with those policies and compliance regulations is not voluntary. It's mandatory.
Yes.
Because you remember, from the days in the company, you can have things saying, breaches can lead to potentially disciplinary actions leading up to and including dismissal.
We just need to remind them,
Right?
But I think, Duncan, one beauty I also find in this group of, Generation Z, right? Or even Generation Alpha. Alpha is my daughter. My daughter is Alpha, right? So I know how trouble they are. Is that actually when these people they feel that they are understood, they are given a trust, right? You do see some surprises from them from time to time. They will dedicate more effort. They will dedicate more effort for you, and they want to surprise you. This is different from managing a group of old people or people working in your department for 20 years. It's different, right? So this is the beauty of it.
I would say it depends on who you have, and I got really lucky because the person on my team shows a lot of drive and initiative. So they're able to outperform, I would say, their immediate peer class because of that. And then it's also self-reinforcing as well, because if they're able to demonstrate to me and to other members of the senior management team that they can go and deliver this, then you naturally get the confidence to let them to go and present or have those communications. A lot of it is also down to personalities as well, because some people might want to say, hey, only I can talk to the board or the senior management. You do the work and I do the talking.
Yes.
I don't do that. With my guy, he's shown that he can do it, so I do not hold him back. If he's done the work, then he can present it, because that's when he gets the recognition that his efforts have resulted in, and he also gets the satisfaction. There's nothing worse than you doing the work and then someone else comes and presents it as if
that's horrible. Right? That's horrible.
So he will have that drive, and I think he feels empowered, and he will push himself further.
Yes.
So,
and this works all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Because I think if you do allow your young guys to show their voice, right, especially in some important occasions or meetings, right? Of course, if they are too timid and they say, okay, I don't want to say it.
That's the
problem. Problem. I respect you, right? I can do it for you. Right. But if you really want, I can give you the opportunity.
Sure.
That's really a actually effective way to build trust.
It's not only that, but it's great leadership too.
It is great leadership too. Right. Yes. Duncan, thank you so much. I think we have been talking about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Very informative discussion. So today we talk about, the useful skill set to succeed in a company. We talk about leadership. We talk about stakeholder management and all the complexities surrounding ESG investments. And I think in respect of ESG investments, you must got tons of information and insight to share with us. So do come often to my channel.
Sure.
Right, Duncan?
Happy to share.
Thank you so much today.
Thank you so much, Maurice.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.